In a fantastical realm, a young boy named Earl resides in this world. A goddess bestows upon each individual a class, a divine gift that dictates their life as path. This predetermined role is unveiled upon their 10th birthday. Today marks a significant occasion for Earl, as he has just reached this age and is about to receive his own assigned class. His parents and sister brim with anticipation, imagining what impressive class Earl might acquire. Yet, after their morning meal, Earl himself appears entirely indifferent to the whole system. He promptly proceeds to the church, where a priest stands by an altar, kneeling in the universal just at a fleeting young body. The priest begins to declare each child as destined class. Some are designated blacksmiths, others chefs, Manuel. Earl's sister informs him that parental classes also sway the outcome, suggesting he is likely to achieve something quite remarkable when it is Earl's turn. As he approaches the priest, a buzz of excited murmurs spreads through the crowd, speculating on the legendary class his child might be granted. Given his mother is Ashworth Saint, and his father an archmage, the priest himself anticipates Johnson's to lay hands on another youth. However, upon pressing Earl's forehead, nothing occurs, leaving the priest perplexed. He eventually gazes down at Earl with sympathy, revealing that the boy was born without a class. Several days elapsed, during which Earl's parents endeavored to uplift his mood, assuring him that concerns about employment were unnecessary. They suggested he could reside the entire basement indefinitely, yet Earl was they truly concerned for himself. He informed his family he was still feeling though, asserting that he had been diligently practicing swordsmanship since his youth, refining his abilities consistently, day after day. And naturally, it would have been considerably simpler for him to progress had he retrieved the swordsman class. Nevertheless, even without it, he believed he should forge his path in the world, relying on the immense volume of rigorous training he had undertaken. With his incredibly powerful motor, his family felt reassured by his resolve. As he departed to spend some solitary time, they saw the sound of considerable commotion emanating from the training grounds. Here, he observed two individuals engaged in sparring. Despite their seemingly rudimentary techniques, merely being granted the swordsman class appeared sufficient to render them competent combatants. He became aware of her observing him and inquired about his presence. He responded that he was there to train, which elicited laughter from them. He asserted that an unclassed individual should never truly spar with a genuine swordsman. They then proceeded to showcase their prowess while they striking at each other with their blades. Earl, however, remained unimpressed and proposed a spar with him. The boys presumed Earl was jesting but consented to about. Before the contest could commence, one of the boys inquired if Earl possessed divine protection. As a figure, everyone is inherently born with it, distinct from acquired classes. This protection functions as a barrier against injury, so it can deplete or be shattered by individuals significantly more powerful. Earl affirmed he possessed this protection. This assurance meant the boy could now unleash his full force without apprehension of causing a fatality. Earl, however, retorted that he had no need for divine protection to overcome a mere brat such as himself, a statement that infuriated the boy. He charged at Earl, swinging his sword with considerable force. Earl effortlessly managed to parry the assault, which astonished the young combatant, who began to flail his sword wildly. Nevertheless, Earl successfully blocked and deflected every single strike aimed at him. The boy grew increasingly desperate, and his companion intervened from behind, attempting to subdue Earl. However, Earl proved too swift, leaping out of the battle. Realizing that, compared to his mother, his boss possessed no real threat, he concluded that a two-on-one scenario might offer a more engaging challenge. With this thought, he charged towards them, and rendered one boy unconscious with a pommel straight to the chin. While the other lost his footing, after stumbling over his friend, and was subsequently knocked to the ground. Both began to wail about the injustice, much like poor sports, when abruptly, a red-haired boy stepped into the arena and commanded the two fools to silence themselves. He declared that had this been a true battlefield, we would already be decisive. Errol did not recognize the newcomer, but the red-haired boy appeared to be familiar with him. As she advanced directly towards Errol and issued a challenge to a duel, he asserted that Errol had only managed to overcome his two insignificant opponents due to some inherent ability inherited from his mother, the sword sign. However, being a classless failure, he would never be able to contend with someone possessing both a class and fundamental training. The red-haired boy ultimately declared himself the son of Captain Evans, commander of the village guard. Errol abruptly recalled the captain. From a time when he had sought his mother as assistant Che. Yin, the boy bore no resemblance whatsoever to the rogue-hound man Errol remembered. The boy lamented how Errol's mother was perpetually regarded as the most formidable, even though his own father was an accomplished swordsman. To definitively demonstrate which family was superior, he intended to vanquish Errol in combat. Both assumed their stances, and the duel finally commenced. The red-haired boy instantly launched an offensive, seeking to deliver a decisive strike without delay. However, Yar, having trained extensively with his mother, possessed a remarkably impenetrable defense. Their combined speed was striking, as they darted across the training ground, exchanging blows, leaving the two earlier combatants utterly bewildered on the earth. Yar perceived that, despite the red-haired boy was considerably more formidable than the previous two simpletons, his rage was fooling his victim, rendering him powerless. Errol attempted to identify a vulnerability before making his move, but the red-haired boy was prepared and unleashed his distinctive aerial slashes. Errol succeeded in blocking on, but the other struck him squarely in the chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. Yar, caught off guard, questioned the nature of the maneuver, but the red-haired boy asserted it was a genuine skill that an unclassed failure such as himself could never acquire. Several days elapsed since that defeat, yet a renewed determination ignited within Errol. He ventured into the forest, armed with his sword, and began practicing alone on a dummy target. After innumerable attempts, he ultimately succeeded in replicating the twin slash technique that had vanquished him previously. Before he could even revel in his achievement, however, a goblin ambushed him, leaping from the bushes, but it proved no match for him, as Errol spun around, unleashing his twin slash technique, which instantly felled the goblin. He felt a surge of excitement regarding his newly acquired technique when, abruptly, a colossal roar echoed from the depths of the forest, a sound that rattled Errol to his very core. He instantly resolved to hasten back to the village and notify the guard, but then he also caught the distressed cry of a boy. This halted him abruptly. He understood that the boy should be in pain and that the guards would arrive too late, prompting him to venture into the forest personally. He pursued cautiously for a short while before finally discerning an injured boy, who proved to be none other than the red-haired individual who had bested him during their training. The boy appeared utterly battered, bleeding profusely from multiple wounds, as Nevi beheld his sword aloft towards his adversary, which was revealed to be an enormous hobgoblin. Even Errol had never encountered such a creature in person. As they typically avoided the village, he pondered whether to seek assistance, uncertain if he possessed the necessary strength to vanquish the monstrous foe. However, he recognized that the red-haired boy would undoubtedly perish if he abandoned him. Yarl ultimately made his decision, and then stealthily moved behind the hobgoblin, and just as the monstrous creature was about to deliver the finishing blow to the red-haired boy, Errol unleashed a powerful twin strike, which slashed through the goblin, instantly ending its life. The boy is too neat to witness the hobgoblin lying lifeless on the ground, but even more so. He is taken aback by Errol's ability to execute an attack that the boy himself had only mastered after extensive training, and the advantages bestowed by his own class. Errol provides the boy with some holy water for his recovery immediately afterward. The boy questions Errol on how he managed such a feat, and Errol responded, explaining that this attack is entirely independent of possessing a class, as a young with sufficient skill, swiftness, and power can replicate it in. He clarifies that after his previous defeat by the Twin Slashes, Errol meticulously analyzed and repeatedly practiced the technique to grasp its fundamental principles, allowing him to now modify the attack at will. The boy remains unconvinced and challenges Errol to a duel, which is readily accepted. Both individuals then position themselves as opposite one another, and simultaneously unleash their ability. To the boy's utter surprise, Errol not only successfully parried his strike but also incorporated an unexpected third slash, which connects with the boy, sending him sprawling to the floor. The captain as soon as arrived, but Errol explains that he is not constrained by the inherent limitations of any specific skill, but his only boundaries are his personal strength and proficiency, meaning he can execute as many slashes as his capability permit. The boy regains his footing and initiates another swift skirmish. But once more, he is struck by the third slash. No even more potent than before, he is again knocked to the ground as Errol claims victory and departs. A full 5 years have elapsed since that day, and Errol resolves to embark on a journey to Brescia, a kingdom renowned for its mastery of the blade. Both his mounted and Captain Evans retrieved their training from Brescia, and Errol aspires to achieve the pinnacle of swordsmanship, just like them. On his journey, he is accompanied by several unfamiliar individuals, two of whom are exceptionally skilled swordsmen. Orman possesses the barbarian class, while the woman is recognized for her dual-wielding expertise, but also seek to refine their abilities in Brescia. But they appear unable to succeed successfully, constantly bickering. The cart driver intervenes, urging them to compose themselves, since they are all headed to the same destination. However, the man, exhibiting strong misogynistic tendencies, insists on sending the woman back to the kitchen before their argument can escalate further. Tauge. The car driver abruptly yells for them to prepare their weapons, announcing that trouble is upon them. Errol calmly gazes upward, discerning a massive horde of orcs, accompanied by their colossal leader, obstructing their path with no intention of allowing them to escape with their lives. Two frightened children within the chart plead with the barbarian man for rescue. But the barbarian, living up to his reputation, professed to be utterly obnoxious and troubled, declaring his unwillingness to jeopardize his own life for the sake of others. He then leaps from the chart and flees. The woman quickly follows suit, asserting that in this world, everyone must fend for themselves. The chart driver becomes anxious, questioning his ability to outpace the horde with his vehicle and its occupant, yet, before he can take any action, Errol silently dismounts from the chart and begins advancing towards the monstrous creature. The driver implores him to retreat and save himself, but Errol disregards the warning, instantly charging at the furious orc, plunging his blade into its heart. The driver is stunned by Errol's astonishing speed and precision, as Errol can outfully outlast and transmutation, continuing to vanish and reappear before the orcs, dispatching them sequentially. Regrettably, however, he finds himself encircled by numerous orcs from every direction, effectively preventing him from utilizing his dash ability. Nevertheless, to the driver's utter astonishment, Errol unleashes a fabled technique known as the Blade Dance. Ia reveals outlet in the basket, simultaneously cutting down on everything the direct protection, mengambil component Errol can almost suspicious. Given that it is exclusively wielded by swordsmen of the Sword Princess class, will are invariably female. Errol, nonetheless, transcends conventional gender expectations. He sprints directly towards the orc leader, skillfully evading its incoming assault. Then leaps atop the colossal creature, plunging his sword deep into its core, instantly slaying it. Finally, he makes his way back to the stunned driver, and instructs him to resume their journey to Brescia. When one of the children inquires about his cause, he simply states that he possesses no class, a revelation that utterly astounds everyone present. He recalls an incident 5 years prior, when he demonstrated the newly acquired twin blade skill to his mother, who initially believed she was merely imagining things. However, upon Errol's explanation that he was training to replicate a skill he observed, she became overwhelmingly joyful and pledged to impart all the techniques employed with the sword Princess Kla. Returning to the present moment, he is roused by the driver, who informs him they have arrived in Brescia, the fabled land of sword. Errol dismounts from the chart and observes the town center bustling with individuals, men sporting swords at their waist. Errol then turns to the driver, questioning if he is, in fact, an advanced swordsman. Initially, the driver asserted he is merely a chart operator, but Errol deduces that only a highly skilled swordsman could have recognized the maneuver she had just performed. Promptly, the chart driver confesses that he belongs to the Holy Knight Class, a rather formidable designation, but he has grown weary of constant combat. To such an extent that he occasionally prefers to unwind and pose as an ordinary driver. The Holy Knight discerns that this is likely Errol's inaugural visit to the city, and advises him that he must first secure membership in a guild, as participation in a tournament is impossible without on. In this particular city, nagging aim and triumphing at this competition serves as the primary method for swordsmen to demonstrate their prowess and actual wealth. Errol responds that financial gain is not his concern. Instead, he desires to challenge the most formidable swordsman the region has to present. The driver cautions him to be wary of detrimental corporate guilds, as they possess the capacity to metaphorically drain your soul in an undesirable manner. With that, the driver turns and departs, while Errol proceeds into the urban area. Observing the diverse populace, some proclaiming their guilds, others recruiting members, and swordsmen queuing up to seek entry into more prestigious organizations. Along his path, he inadvertently collides with a blonde young girl who instantly clings to him, declaring her affiliation with our known guild and expressing her desire for him to enlist with them. Errol immediately becomes suspicious of her, given her apparent desperation for retreat, and thus declines her offer. The young girl, however, persists in her effort, and repeatedly importunes him to join her guild, but Errol steadfastly declines. He then inquires about the most powerful guild in the area. She reluctantly divulges that the Shadow Blade Guild currently stands as one of the most formidable, boasting a distinct class of swordsmen. He then requests directions from her, and promptly heads towards the guild en route. A guard intercepts him, directing him to the reception area for the required assessment. At the reception, he encounters a lengthy queue of aspiring swordsmen eager to test their fortunes in joining the renowned guild. This scene also invigorates Errol, who musses about the caliber of formidable individuals he may have to contend with. However, when his turn to register arrives, the receptionist shouts at him, greeting him as a classless loser and asserting that only individuals possessing an advanced swordsman class are eligible to apply for the guild trial. Errol insists he is confident he can succeed in their assessment, but the receptionist declines to process his registration. Disheartened by his rejection, he resolves to depart, at which point he notices 3 pre-arranged swordsmen entering the hall, who are instantly greeted with a celebrity-like deference. Disregarding the showmanship, he approached various guilds, only to face universal. Weary, he re-entered the city, Retrieving a letter from his mother, she had advised him to seek out her former guild, confident he would offer assistance. He pondered if his mother had foreseen such struggles, yet he felt thankful. However, he hadn't even begun to read the letter. The blonde girl, persistent, once more clung to him, asserting their willingness to accept him. Aaron, however, reiterated his refusal, prompting her to desperately plead for him to join her guild. She implored him to consider it an act of kindness, gesturing towards an impressive guildhall she declared as her own. This revelation caused Errol somewhat off guard. The young girl clarified that their guild, Dragonfang, had historically been the nation's premier guild for an extended period, but had recently deteriorated significantly. Presently, they are the weakest. Yet she aspires to restore into its past eminence. The name Dragonfang unexpectedly resonated with him, triggering a memory of his mother, who had once spoken of her guild as leader. A master of tools for the who had christened the guild Dragonfang in honor of his signature technicoid. He promptly retrieved the letter to verify the name, confirming it was indeed the guild his mother had spoken of. He consented to accompany her in CD, much to her delight. However, the instant we stepped into the room, I spotted an elderly, inebriated man missing an arm. Sprawled on the sofa, the man gruffly instructed Errol to depart, declaring the guild as failed before stumbling away. Meanwhile, the young girl informed Errol that this was her father, formerly recognized as the city's second finest swordsman. Yet, since the loss of his aunt, he had been irrevocably altered. Errol, nonetheless, astonished her by declaring his intention to become a member of the guild. This news greatly pleased the young girl, who promptly prepared a membership agreement. Errol completed the form and returned it, whereupon she began to read it. Before inquiring why he had left the class section empty, Errol responded that he possessed no class. The young girl's demeanor instantly shifted, and she answered asword. She asserted that she had assumed him to be a high-level swordsman, given his elusive behavior. However, before she could elaborate further, the door swung open. Then a striking red-haired woman named Ray stepped inside. The young girl instantly rushed to her, tearfully exclaiming that this classless idiot had misled her into joining the guild. This instantly captured Ray's attention. She gazed at Errol, remarking that she had never anticipated encountering him in this place. Perplexed, Errol inquired how she recognized him. Ray appeared taken aback, stating, "We hailed from the same village and had trained alongside each other." This information still failed to jog Errol's memory, but he then suddenly understood that the red-haired boy they had frequently sparred with in the past was, in fact, again. The young girl was also familiar with the tale and questioned Ray if this was the classless individual who had bested her in her youth, as she had always considered the story to be mere legend. Ray, however, remained fixated on that past defeat. Lan promptly challenged Errol to a duel. The confrontation began, with Ray immediately employing her twin/attack, which Errol believed they should effectively parry. Yet, to his astonishment, Ray /stole through his defenses, striking him directly in the chest. This bewildered him, but Ray then disclosed that she possessed the power swordsman class. This unique class enabled her to wield a sword 5 times the weight of a standard blade, consequently granting her 5 times the force in every single sword strike. Errol found himself impressed that she maintained her swiftness even while employing such a weighty sword, but he recognized that her speed paled in comparison to his own. During her subsequent assault, he conjured an afterimage of himself, successfully diverting Ray's attention, before materializing behind her and striking her back. Ray, disoriented, attempted another attack, but the outcome remained identical. She found it inconceivable that Errol was employing a technique typically reserved for only the most highly skilled swordsmen. A swordsman. Meanwhile, Errol understood that she was too resilient to be defeated by his standard attacks. Rey, aware of this herself, attempted to conclude the battle with her powerful strikes. However, Errol deployed his mother as distinctive counter-move, forcing Rey to her knees and abruptly ending the duel. Following this, the young girl's entire demeanor transformed. She warmly welcomed him back to their guild, informing him that they were currently burdened by immense debt. To alleviate this financial crisis, they would need to participate in upcoming tournaments and compete as a trio against other guilds, each fielding a full team of 5 members. Errol, nevertheless, found himself invigorated by the prospect of combat against formidable adversaries and eagerly anticipated the challenge to further refine his ability. The following morning, Errol awoke in his personal room, nestled in a new bed. Noise was no his hour. It took him a brief moment to process the recent events since his arrival. He now found himself a member of the same fabled guild. That his mother had also been associated with her, a fact of great significance to him. Consequently, he resolved not to fail him and to restore the guild to its former glory. After freshening up, he entered the living room, where the young girl and Rey were already awake, conversing with the fireplace about the impending tournament. The lolly promptly drew Errol into their discussion. She announced that the tournament was scheduled to commence the following week, and since their roster now boasted 3 members instead of 2, they were officially eligible to compete. She further informed Errol that the competition would be exceptionally challenging, as it was an elimination-style tournament featuring on-on-on matches. However, most opposing guilds would likely fill 5 members, putting them at a significant disadvantage. Therefore, each of them would need to overcome more than one adversary to even progress past the initial round. The young girl, however, maintained a rather optimistic outlook, asserting that they should still manage, given that their guild already possessed 2 ranked swordsmen. Thus, unless they encountered an unranked swordsman, they ought to be evenly matched in their bouts. Errol, somewhat unfamiliar with this system, inquired about the precise meaning of these ranks. The young girl clarified that there were 5 distinct ranks, ranging from A to D, which are representing the pinnacle of achievement. She added that among all swordsmen in Brescian, only a select few were considered unranked. In contrast, Adiran signified a complete novice who merely understood how to grip a sword. Satan probably asserted that both she and Roy held the distinction of being ranked swordsmen, and given that Errol had successfully bested Roy in a direct confrontation, it implied he too was a ranked swordsman, on par with them. With the presence of 3 ranked swordsmen, he ought to possess a strong likelihood of advancing rogue at least the initial round. With that, the young girl headed into the kitchen, leaving Errol immersed in his thoughts. However, as Rey was about to depart, he reached out and stopped her, and inquired about her specific abilities as a power swordsman. Though still visibly hurt by her defeat the previous day, she responded that one of her skills involved solidifying her external mana shield, thereby safeguarding her from the majority of weaker attackers. Errol contemplated this for a moment, musing on how he might acquire such a valuable technique for himself. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He requested Rey to strike him with her sword, still in its sheath. Rey initially declined, stating her disinterest, but Errol grasped her hand, imploring her to comply. Rey, however, appeared to misinterpret his intentions, suspecting Errol was suggesting something unconventional, yet she was entirely averse to the notion and began to tell him that perhaps they should commence with a more conventional approach. Errol, disregarding her suggestive tone and recognizing their differing interpretations, clarified his request. He wanted her to strike him, so he could master the technique of solidifying his mana protection shield, a skill he believed would be most advantageous when confronting multiple adversaries. Rey is taken aback, questioning Errol's mental state, as she firmly believes skills are definitely bestowed, not learned, especially in dangerous scenarios. She asserts that skills are solely the goddess is divine favor and cannot be acquired, but Errol, now an atheist, shortly tells her to be quiet. His revelation that he has already mastered abilities such as twin blood sludge and instant transmission leaves Ray speechless, prompting her to reluctantly agree to give his method a single try. Upon entering the training area, she presents him with her sword, cautioning him that it weighs 5 times more than an average blade. She insisted that without the brute strength skill, Errol would be incapable of wielding it. But Aram, once more, she launches her blade effortlessly taking the sword. He then unsheathes it and swings it with remarkable fluidity and effortlessness, leaving Ray utterly dumbfounded once more, as she demands to know how accomplishes such feats. Despite his lack of a class or formal skill, Errol explains that everything he has acquired is a result of unwavering dedication and consistent daily practice, pledging to equal their innate talent, prowess, diligence, and perseverance. This revelation softens Ray's stance, leading her to apologize for her earlier remarks before retrieving her sword and consenting to the training. She warns him, however, that she will not go easy on him. Errol readily agrees and attempts to flee, but the opportunity has vanished, and she promptly strikes him across the face with her shattered body. Shortly thereafter, the lolly rushes into the training area, panting and visibly anxious, to inform Aaron and Ray that she has just discovered which guild they will be competing against, and the news is grim. She reveals that their opponents are none other than the elite members of the formidable Black Bloody Guild, boasting more than 8 ranked swordsmen, commanded by their leader, Go, a man renowned for his viper-like ruthlessness. However, the lolly shows no intention of retreating, delivering an impassioned speech to them, declaring that they will exert every effort to overcome their adversaries. Her gaze then falls upon Aaron, who is sprawled on the ground, having been thoroughly pommeled by Ray. During the practice session, the lolly inquires if Errol is deceased, but Ray assures he are merely engaged in a unique form of training. The lolly, however, suspects that Ray is simply relishing her frustrations on the novice. Errol eventually resists, declaring his hunger. After enduring such a beating and expresses a desire for food, a week swiftly passes during their training, and at last, the day of the competition dawns, drawing spectators from across the nation. Congregate at the Colosseum, engaging in discussions about the upcoming match, while Errol is utterly astonished by the sheer scale of the arena. The lolly catches snippets of conversation, where Bobble are asserting that the Dragonfang's guild had utterly failed, which ignites her fury, but Ray successfully intervenes to restrain her. Errol then observes that gambling is also prevalent at this event, with wagers based on the probable winning team. The lolly informs him that the current odds for their match stand at 20-1 against them. Errol remarks that such odds are quite remarkable. However, the lolly yells at him to be quiet, clarifying that these odds signify a complete lack of faith from anyone in the city regarding their ability to triumph over the Black Bloody Guild. Yet, she added, this could paradoxically be a hidden advantage, as a victory would allow him to amass a substantial fortune from just one match. Ray attempts to show her negligent energy. However, the lolly is beyond appeasement. With a fierce glint in her eye, she vehemently declared that winning this match is an absolute imperative, regardless of the cost. She explained that a loss would mean the complete dissolution of their guild, and to ensure they become immensely wealthy post-match, she has unilaterally put the guild house as collateral. Thus, a victory would irrevocably transform their lives, ensuring they are no longer disparaged as a once great good no failing guild. Ray then inquires about the consequences of a loss, to which the lolly dismissively responded had it as irrelevant. Because in the event of defeat, they would have forfeited everything regardless. Abruptly, a man calls out to her, who is revealed to be none other than Geo, the formidable leader of the Black Blood Guild. He immediately begins to disparage the lowly, revealing that he personally orchestrated event to ensure that the inaugural match would be contested between their respective guilds. They confidently asserted that it will be an effortless victory for his team, and they are destined to achieve, and furthermore, Dotsi Chan utterly extinguished the final vestiges of the guild that onslaught a prestigious reputation. Heichen mockingly reassures her not to fret, suggesting that if she somehow manages to secure a victory, that would imply that her guild is indeed superior. However, he quickly added that such an outcome is contingent upon her defeating 3 ranked swordsmen, an unlikely prospect given the presence of a classless individual on her team. It appears highly improbable. With a chuckle at his own cleverness, he wishes them good luck before the party. Shortly after, Ray stepped into the arena, where Errol observes that Gio himself is not participating in the combat, prompting him to ponder if this improvised their odds of victory. However, Ray informs him that their entire opposing team consists of ranked combatants, rendering his absence inconsequential. Moreover, she noticed that their current formation appears unusually aggressive. At last, the moment for battle commences. The unknown sergeant introduces the competitors. From the Black Blood side, a grand higher duty, identified as Avenger, steps forward, wobbly. Dot manages to declare his intention to single-handedly defeat the entire opposing team. Meanwhile, the commentator expresses surprise upon realizing that Errol, the classless swordsman, will be representing the Dragon Fangs. The Avenger appears indifferent, believing that the speed with which he dispatches a classless foe is irrelevant. Yet he proceeds with the match nonetheless. Thus it would allow him to face the female opponents afterward. The match begins, and within moments, the Avenger lunges forward, impaling Errol through the chest. His incredible speed catches everyone off guard, but as the lolly expresses concern for Errol, Ray instructs her to observe closely, revealing that it was merely Errol as aftermatch. The Avenger appears taken aback, but remains undeterred, pivoting and lunging once more, only to encounter yet another aftermatch. He comprehended that this engagement will not conclude as swiftly as he had anticipated, as he finds himself enveloped by multiple illusory figures of Errol. Yet this fact does not perturb him. He intends to utilize his superior speed to strike down every single one of them. The aftermages launch a simultaneous assault, and the Avenger shoots through them on, only to be impaled by the genuine Errol, who had successfully generated 3 aftermages. A feat considered exceptionally challenging, the Avenger collapses to the ground, and the match concludes abruptly. Errol stated had his mother will train with him by simultaneously employing 5 images, and even there, she was holding back. The commentator is utterly astounded, as the crowd erupts in enthusiastic applause for the unclassed contender. Yet then comprehends that despite attempting the identical technique, Dotas the Avenger, his execution lacked the same level of refinement, indicating a need for even more dedicated practice. Errol's subsequent match pits him under single opponent. He will relentlessly presses his assault with an unceasing volley of sword strike. However, Errol skillfully parries every blow before employing his twin slash attack to subdue his adversary. With 2 opponents already defeated, the next challenger he confronts is a reverse grip dagger wielder, who exhibits greater caution in his movement. Man incorporates various martial arts techniques in conjunction with his blade. Nevertheless, this proves futile, as Errol's superior speed allows him to disorient his foe with afterimages, before delivering a decisive blow from behind. Both Ray and the lolly are utterly astonished by the fact that this individual has just effortlessly vanquished 3 ranked swordsmen in record time. That affect that instills the lolly with genuine optimism about their chances of winning the overall match. The subsequent match proves to be somewhat more challenging as he is pitted against a short swordsman, renowned for their resilience. As Errol finds himself unable to deliver any critical blows, he is compelled to maneuver evasively and gradually erode his opponent's defenses. Gradually, his adversary loudly questioned how he could be classless, but Errol asserted that all his accomplishments stemmed solely from diligent effort. The hulking Fu declared that mere hard work was insufficient against innate talent. When charged, executing a shield bash. Despite the challenge, Errol employed his motor as characteristic for a safe technique, anticipating his adversary's every move. He successfully dislodged the shield with a kick. Then, applying a move he learned from his previous martial artist opponent, struck the brute in the abdomen. Seizing the shield, he advanced. The enraged brute attempted a counter-attack, but Errol skillfully parried before launching his own dash. Employing the very same shield bash, he annihilated his foe. The crowd erupted, accusing him of deceit regarding his run, prompting organizers to present his official class identification. Displaying it on the magical crystal band, they broadcast live confirmation that he was, in fact, classless. With this resolved, the subsequent challenger was introduced. This new swordsman, named Masamune, appeared distinguished. He hailed from an Eastern samurai lineage and wielded a curved blade known as a katana. Even before Masamune unsheathed his weapon, Errol perceived an imminent threat, preparing himself, understanding this encounter would surpass the difficulty of previous ones. He discerned Masamune as intent to unleash an ultimate technique. Poised like a serpent ready to strike, yet, driven by curiosity, Errol deliberately advanced into peril. The instant, Errol entered the swordsman's striking distance, Masamune swiftly lunged with his blade. However, Errol proved swifter, vanishing behind him, leaving Masamune stunned. Errol then informed him that while he was indeed the swiftest individual Errol had encountered in the city, regrettably for Masamune, Errol is on major possessed far greater speed. Consequently, he was accustomed to such swiftness. With that, he unleashed the sword princess's ultimate technique, piercing his adversary repeatedly, to securing his victory. A profound silence fell upon the stunned onlookers as the presumed feeblest member of the most insignificant guild effortlessly vanquished the most formidable champion from the most powerful guilds. Errol headed towards Ray and the Wall, feeling satisfied that their earnings should now be sufficient to maintain the guild's operations. Upon their return to the guild house that evening, celebrations immediately commenced with drinks flowing freely. Errol, however, remained astonished beyond particular detail. That the lolly was of legal drinking age. She asserted her status as a mature woman, despite her diminutive stature. She, in turn, found it incredible that Errol had single-handedly vanquished 5 ranked swordsmen from the nation's premier guild. Convinced he was her path out of destitution and anonymity, she resolved to win his affection. She attempted to propose a marriage, asserting her ability to satisfy his every wish. However, Errol, a true individualist, flatly refused, stating his preference for someone akin to Ray. This instantly caused Ray to blush. She rose from her chair, admonishing Errol to chase such remark, especially if his intention was merely to rebuff the lolly. Yet, Errol was genuinely contemplative. He inquired why she believed they was teasing her, to which she responded by recalling their youth. They had referred to her as Amma during a sparring match. She lamented that everyone she encountered claiming she possessed no feminine allure, but Errol, however, showed clearly perceived two prominent feminine attributes directly before him and strongly disagreed. The Lolitan understood that Ray was completely unaware of her own greatest asset, or how to effectively utilize it. Therefore, she had no real concern regarding her. With this token, Sebagian masaging Errol as legs, asserting him is weary. That from the day as combat, and suggested he join her in the bedroom. Ray instantly flushed with embarrassment, instructing the loli to chase her peculiar remarks. However, the loli offered a cunning smile, insisting she merely intended to provide him with a much-deserved massage following his exhausting day. To her astonishment, Errol responded that he would prefer a massage from Ray, though his interpretation of a massage involved being thoroughly bathed and hair. In the training ground, as he strove to master the reinforcement magic that Ray wielded with such apparent ease, a testament to her clout and abilities. Lily observed from the balcony, pondering if Errol truly understood the concept of a massage. The continuous commotion eventually roused the loli as father. He descended to the training area, severely hungover, grumbling about the noise and asserting they need to unleash their frustrations over losing the tournament before it even started, especially in the dead of night. The loli, however, informed him that they had, in fact, triumphed in their boat, which had been against the reigning top girl. This piqued his interest, but he surmised that the Black Blade must have deployed the Ilberan, our Satirnovich as mere cannon fodder. The loli, however, astonished him for their be revealing that all their adversaries were Aether, and furthermore, Errol had single-handedly vanquished every one of them. This revelation jolted her father out of his hangover as he gazed at the bruised and battered Errol, questioning if the boy truly possessed such immense strength. The loli declared that she had pledged numerous wagers, and Errol's complete sweep of the opposing Tatman had hit the jackpot. Now, not only were they free from debt, but they also possessed ample funds to cover their operational expenses. Her father, however, remained less sanguine, asserting that is, by some stroke of fortune, this youth genuinely possessed such power. He would inevitably be recruited by larger, more influential, and wealthier guildry, so she ought not to raise her expectations. The loli dismissed his concern, stating that she would soon marry Errol. They would be binding them together for life. Errol then declared that he had no intention of doing any such thing. He quickly shifted his focus to her father, remarking that while the loli made by as to born simpleton, at last she was a defeatist, who abandoned everything. This was an unmistakable slight aimed at the loli's father, who glared menacingly, yet Errol failed to grasp the implication. He proceeded, suggesting that her father should abandon his self-pitying demeanor and behave more appropriately for his age, given that he still possessed one hand capable of wielding a sword. This instantly provoked her father, who says that Errol be the taller, instructing him to refrain from commenting on matters about which he had no understanding. He informed Aaron that a dual-wielding swordsman incapable of dual-wielding was merely a waste of breath. Errol countered, stating his disagreement that he himself was a classless swordsman, who continued to compete and strive for advancement in this world. With that, her father shoved him aside and ascended the stairs. Wally and Ray instantly rushed to Errol's side, inquiring about his well-being. Loli apologized for her father's conduct while expressing gratitude to Errol for sparing his men. Errol asserted that even after losing his arm and being out of action for such an extended period, her father remained remarkably powerful, and it was a squandering of his immense strength and accumulated experience that he refused to utilize. He mused internally about the impressive technique he could acquire from a dual-wielding swordsman, and vowed to himself that he would inspire Loli's father, Rod to grasp a sword once more. Loli, overhearing his ambition to master new abilities, proposed that he explore some of the nearby dungeons, situated close to the city. Errol, being entirely unfamiliar with dungeons, was informed by Ray that they were subterranean caverns where countless monsters spawned. The whole area was also riddled with traps, making it an excellent location for acquiring new proficiencies and gaining levels through practical combat experience. which would prove beneficial during the World Cup. Errol is bewildered by her word, so she clarifies that the city hosts an annual competition where the nation as most skilled swordsmen gather to display their prowess and establish themselves as the country's premier bladewielder. Lolly promptly retrieves a registration form. She instructs Errol to complete it if he wishes to compete, but to their dismay, they shares it before their eyes. Ray, bewildered, inquires if he has no interest in the competition. Errol responds that Lolly was attempting to deceive him, then presents her with a marriage license for signing instead. Lolly chuckles, asserting she was merely gauging his reaction. However, Errol, finished with pleasantries, seizes her in a rear naked chokehold as a disciplinary measure. The following morning, Errol awakens to Lolly attempting to ambush him, but he evades her, secures her to the bed, and departs later that day. Subsequently, they proceed to the dungeons as a group. Lolly clarifies that individuals can utilize teleportation circles to instantly travel to specific dungeon floors of their choice, though access is restricted to previously explored levels. Lolly boasts of having attained level 12, while Ray has progressed to level 14. Errol promptly resolves to accompany Ray to the 14th floor, but Lolly asserted that the system doesn't function in that manner, explaining that one must have physically visited a level to return there. This was a disappointment, as Errol had hoped to confront the most formidable creatures from the outset immediately. However, Lolly advises him not to fret, revealing she knows a significantly quicker path that will guide them to the upper level swiftly. They consent to the proposal, but Lolly attempts to isolate Errol, suggesting Ray could proceed with her level 14 exploration since Errol wouldn't require dual escorts. She begins pulling him away, but Errol, not easily swayed, insists Ray accompany them. They then step onto the first floor. Upon entry, they are instantly assailed by two armored creatures. Errol unsheathes his sword and engages one in combat, while Ray confronts the other. He observes with astonishment that despite their cumbersome armor, the knaves exhibit remarkable nimbleness, yet he deems them manageable. Consequently, he employs his dash step technique and severs the naked head, only to discover the armor is hollow and animated by the dungeon as inherent mana. That knight resumes movement even without its head, and Ray asserts that these entities possess no true vulnerabilities and are impervious to pain. Therefore, Errol opts to target their legs, a strategy that proves highly effective as the magic knights crumble to the ground. Ray simultaneously dispatches her adversary, stating that they will soon regenerate, necessitating their immediate progression. Before advancing further, Errol inquires about Lolly's class, to which Brody declares herself a venture. Session offers to instruct him in anything he desires, either in the training area or in bed, but Errol rebuts her advances onward and continues forward. However, before stepping onto the second level, they discern shots for assistance emanating from beyond the door. Upon approaching, they discover a bloodshot man kneeling on the ground, pleading for aid. Ray proposes escorting him to the surface, but the man declines, asserting his companions remain weak, severely injured by a hidden trap. He implores him to assist in rescuing his friends, but Lolly promptly adopts a transactional approach, demanding payment for their assistance. To her astonishment, the man even offers a substantial amount, derived from his gambling winnings. Yet, Errol perceives an anomaly. Trailing behind the man, he observes their typical one cannot even sit united without holy water, much less strike back into a perilous chamber. He deduces that the blood and wounds are entirely fabricated. However, he opts to withhold this insight, believing it might pave the way for an intriguing and enjoyable development. The man then guides them to a concealed room. Within, they discover a blue trail leading to a central puddle containing a single gold coin. The glint of the coin instantly captivates Lolly. Asimov's story thrives at the teleportation circle materializes beneath their feet. Ray comprehends this is a trap, while the man smirks triumphantly at them. He boasts of being handsomely compensated for such a simple task, but to his astonishment, the magic circle transports him along with the others. They all materialize on an unfamiliar floor, or even Ray has the encounter, indicating it as deeper than the 14 TH level. Despite no immediate signs of powerful food, the man who faked that injury trembles with terror, stammering that this is reputedly the dungeon as deepest level, the dwelling place of the advanced sword god. Abruptly, a knight clad in rainbow enchanted armor materializes before them, but Lily dismisses the legend of the sword god, a class widely considered a mermaid. Errol, however, grasps the gravity of their predicament and instantly shoves Lily to the ground. Just as the sword god unleashes an aerial slash potent enough to fracture the dungeon wall, without hesitation, the sword god then assails Errol. Errol barely manages to raise his sword in time to parry the assault, and though he is propelled into the wall, he comprehends that he endured the blow. Solely thanks to the reinforcement magic Rainy retrieved from Ray, he attempts to counter-slash his adversary, but the knight proves exceptionally swift, utilizing advanced maneuvers to retreat rapidly. With as Miller, he declares this an excellent chance to challenge his abilities, a statement that utterly astounds his companions. He then employs the identical divine step technique to bridge the gap and presses his assault, unleashing a flurry of blows upon the knight, which are parried, compelling the knight to withdraw. However, the knight activates a skill that intensifies the room's gravity, pinning the orcas to the floor. Yet Errol effortlessly retains his footing. This is because he encountered a similar phenomenon during his youth, while training against his master, where he exerted all his might merely to remain upright. Thus, when his mother attacked, he was rendered helpless. This time, however, is different. He utilizes the gold choice to neutralize the gravitational effect, thereby creating a brief vulnerability. Errol exploits this opening to its maximum potential, unleashing one of his most formidable abilities, Infinite Breath, following this assault. The knight fragments into countless pieces. This outcome stuns everyone present in the chamber. He then restores his figure with some holy water, and subsequently, he also flee depart the dungeon via a teleportation span. Back at the tavern, Rod is once again imbibing when he overhears a discussion among three foolish youths. They are discussing how they lure the wretched recruits of the Dragonfang Guild into Asdare, implying they are unlikely to ever return. Rod approaches their table and shatters it with a single puncher, commanding them to divulge everything now. However, he is cut off by George, who derides him as a worthless drunkard. Rod instantly comprehends that George orchestrated this scheme, which implies his daughter as prospects of survival are virtually non-existent. Utterly devastated, he looks at George but is effortlessly cast acid like a commoner, collapsing to his knees, yearning to have saved his young daughter. Yet, a sudden voice from the entrance captures his notice, and he turns to behold Lulu, accompanied by Errol and Ray, entering the tavern, conversing about their hunger. Lolly spots her father and the unpleasant George, but is taken aback when Rod embraces her tightly, offering thanks to a higher power for his daughter as safety. Ray then confronts George. Accusations surface that George has accomplished the full details, confirming George is orchestrating of the entire scheme. Yet, in true political fashion, he outright denies a culpability, asserting that each person bears responsibility for their personal well-being within the dungeons. Errol considers this a reasonable argument. Rod confronts George, vowing he won't evade justice, but George dismisses him as a worthless, drunken failure before exiting the chamber. As Errol ponders what fresh challenge await, several days elapse. Lolita retrieves a parchment containing the complete preliminary tournament pairings. For the competition, To her dismay, she discovers she has been placed in the same bracket as Aram, instantly deflating her hopes, as this signifies her short time. Absolute lack of opportunity to win the preliminary rounds and thus represent her guild in the main event. Aram, however, finds the idea of prelims somewhat perplexing. Ray clarifies, explaining that due to the Sword God tournament's immense popularity, drawing countless aspiring swordsmen, it becomes practically impossible to accommodate every participant in the primary competition. Consequently, the city arranges preliminary rounds featuring varied brackets determined by a random dice roll. The matchups within each bracket are entirely by chance, and the victor of each preliminary group earns an immediate entry into the main tournament. Ariel then examines the scroll Ray had been perusing, and observes that she is assigned to a different group than Errol. She expresses gratitude, acknowledging her slim chances against Errol anyway, and begins to offer prayers to the deity for assistance in navigating the preliminary round smoothly. Meanwhile, Errol playfully mocks her about daddy issues, before Lolly interjects, cutting them off, stating they need to return to the dungeons for further training. However, Errol has grown weary of the dungeon and wishes to depart. Lolly, nonetheless, attempts to charm him, explaining her need for a robust protection should circumstances turn unfavorable. Mai, observing this, recognizes Lolly as rather pitiful demeanor, and resolves to impart some lessons on self-reliance. But before their departure, Rod dramatically enters the room, seizing his daughter, advising her to exercise extreme caution, as George may choose to strike once more at a moment. Lolly, perceiving the apprehension in her father's gaze, solemnly consented to proceed with prudence. As he was able to exit, Ruth turned to find Errol silently scrutinizing him. Ruth, however, asserted that Les still had an opportunity to improve his conduct and become a more vigilant father to his daughter. Errol, nonetheless, merely offered a smile, remarking that it's never too late to cultivate kindness, and departs. A few weeks later, the preliminary tournament day finally dawns. Matches commence, with spectators cheering from the battlements, as combatants engage in a rapid exchange of sword and sword blows. Gradually but inevitably, the pool of participants diminishes as individuals are eliminated. Even Lolly is defeated in her match, failing to even encounter Errol. She sulks in a corner, disheartened by the outcome. Given that she had at least a spirit to reach the finale, this team, Lauren, however, disregards her emotions, stating her concern about not winning the prelims was unfounded, because, being in the same bracket, she would have been defeated regardless. This remark left Wally even more dejected than before, yet she manages to compose herself, and advises him to remain vigilant, despite his considerable strength, as the other finalists in their group possesses some unequal abilities. Errol, however, appears largely unconcerned, responding that he has already encountered nearly every conceivable stratagem, from his battles within the dungeon to he hopes his particular adversary will catch him off guard. Lolly, conversely, expresses skepticism, as she reveals that this red-haired combatant is, in fact, a magic swordsman capable of employing spells to augment their blades with mana and enhanced potency. This revelation intrigued Aaron, as he had anticipated that Setu would permit the use of magic in a competition focused on pure swordsmanship. Lolly clarifies that on S-Class is irrelevant. Only guild affiliation is required for tournament entry. Following this, the announcer summons Aaron, and Lolly offers him good wishes. They approaches into the arena, confronting the red-haired young woman, who promptly informs him that she is a magic swordsman and officially recognized class, and therefore she expects no complaints about the fight being unfair. Because of her magical abilities, Errol directly assures her he has no objections, stating that the superior combatant will prevail. With that, the announcer signals the start of the bout. and the red-haired girl instantly begins launching fireballs at him. Aaron, moving with incredible agility, evades each attack individually while parrying and cutting through the remaining projectiles. The magic swords girl, however, appears to possess an inexhaustible reserve of mana, maintaining her relentless assault. Yen, Arol skillfully ducks and weaves through the incoming attacks. To close the distance, he attempts to strike her down at once, but the girl successfully parries his blow, simultaneously employing another fireball to repel him. Errol begins to gauge her abilities, remarking on the apparent convenience of seamlessly transitioning between close quarters and long-range assaults at her discretion. She proudly asserts her natural talent, claiming that an unclassified failure like him could never vanquish her. Aaron, however, retorts that she has not mastered either of those two disciplines, even if she possesses a fundamental understanding of both. This infuriates her, and she pledges to make him regret his statement. As she channels her magi to infuse her blade with fire, transforming it into a flaming sword, asserting that only an individual of the true magic swordsman class could wield such a weapon. With that, she brandishes her sword, causing the flames to pursue Aaron, who calmly sidesteps and counters with a slash. Yay! Even her fans is challenging to anticipate the direction of her subsequent attack, owing to her unpredictable movement. Ye considers her talent, suggesting she must have dedicated considerable effort to practice. However, Hasun takes a stationary stance and utterly demonstrates to her what genuine mastery entails as he begins to deflect the fiery assaults. Without shifting an inch from his pawn, Gil contends that even if you're fundamental swordsmanship surpassed Loli as she could have been far more formidable and problematic, but at her current proficiency, she is scarcely more capable than an NPC. This remark profoundly motivates the Gion, and as she loses her composure, Errol says a jumps to unleash a twin slash, which completely doses her very aura, stunning her. Before she could even approach the event, he employs his blink step to materialize behind her and strikes her on the head with his sword as pommel, rendering her unconscious. The audience erupts in applause as the judges declare Errol the victor of the fourth bloods, yet his sole contemplation was how to fully grasp and implement the technique he had just witnessed the girl employ. Several days then elapsed, and at last, the day of the final tournament dawned. Loli returns to the guild house to roast her father, urging him to attend the tournament, with her so they can support both Aaron and Ray, who each triumphed in their respective blocks and advanced to the main competition. Her father, without even opening his eyes, instructs her to go alone, expressing his general disinterest. Loli then attempts to provoke him, being weary if he first encountering George Joe. Rod instantly reacts defensively, asserting he is not afraid of George, but quickly regains his composure. In a vulnerable moment, he confessed to his daughter that attempting to wield his sword the previous day had revealed how rusty he had become. Geverna might not even triumph in the Sword God tournament, a statement that deeply infuriated Loli, who couldn't even clear the preliminary round, let alone aspire to win the entire competition. Referring to herself as rusty, she retorted that he should instead focus on how he could still contend with the finaliste, especially when many other swordsmen who dedicated their lives to training couldn't even pass the initial match. Eventually, Rod consented to attend, and en route to the arena, his thoughts drifted to the team he mentored Ray. He found the Richard Poseidon when he possessed both arms, contrasting it with his current status as an armed man, and pondered how Ray, his former student, would fare in the competition. As his most senior pupil, he felt a deep bond with her. Back at the tournament, Ray appeared to be struggling with her composure. Her legs trembled with anxiety as she stared at the ground, only to be startled by Aaron, who inquired if she was apprehensive about potentially fighting him in a match. This interaction seemed to dissipate her fears, prompting her to attempt a punch, which Errol deftly caught just as the judge declared. As the inaugural bout would feature George, the reigning champion, clashing with Aaron, the unranked prodigy who had astonished everyone with his undefeated streak. As Errol rose to depart, Ray grasped his hand, wishing him good fortune. With that, Errol stepped into the arena, where Lolly's voice rang out. She urged him to thoroughly defeat George. However, the instant Errol's gaze fell upon George as he entered the fighting ground, he instantly sensed that something was amiss. George's eyes had taken on a purple hue, and he sported fangs and a horn, appearing as if he had just made a pact with a demon. Errol's instinct screamed danger, but Rod, recognizing the sword George clutched, immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. He turned Errol to withdraw, explaining that George was wielding a blade containing a formidable trapped demon. George's voice, when he finally spoke, was noticeably altered. The entity, speaking through George, asserted that it had anticipated being recognized. Lolly expressed confusion, believing George showed no wrath, but Rod clarified that the demon itself had seemingly possessed George, rendering him completely without control. Rod then revealed that the sword was believed to be the original weapon wielded by the legendary sword god, who vanquished the Demon King. However, before his demise, the Demon King cursed the blade, necessitating its confinement within the royal repository. The demon, knowing George's body, smirked. It declared that it had been imprisoned for centuries but had patently awaited the day someone would realize it and attempt to harness its power. And that, it proclaimed, was precisely what had transpired with George. It then announced to the entire stadium that it was the Demon Gilda, the destroyer of humanity, a revelation that even drew Ray out. Ray asserted that she had always believed Gilda to be merely a myth, a cautionary tale for children, a demon who had grown powerful, enough to obliterate the entire planet. Panic and disorder erupted as the common folk recognized the name and began to flee the stadium in terror. This triggered a stampede. Gilda, however, released the sound of women screaming for their life and had no intention of allowing Chen to escape so readily. Thus he conjured a magic circle beneath himself. This circle enveloped the entire stadium in a dome of mystical energy, trapping and imprisoning everyone within. He shuddered at the terror he was inflicting. He declared that the cries of humans were like music to his ears, and he intended to savor every moment as he massacred them all. To his astonishment, Errol remained steadfast, his sword already unshattered. Gilda commanded him to fight for his life, but Errol asserted his confidence in defeating him stemmed from the fact that Gilda had been vanquished once before, proving his fallibility. The demon scoffed, retorting that the last time it was defeated, it was by a sword god, and according to George's memories, no sword god was currently alive. Errol countered that a sword god was indeed still alive his own motive, and furthermore, he could still vanquish Gilda without bring a sword god himself. The monstrous entity couldn't her but lauge, but it smeared quickly as Errol lunged forward in an assault, compelling the demon to recoil before launching its own counter-attack. Errol gracefully evaded the incoming blow, while the demon stood stunned, comprehending that the boy had just employed the divine step technique, a technique exclusively utilized by sword god. Euron, however, pressed on, continuously employing the maneuver to strike the demon from various angles. Yet, the demon merely smirked, asserting that Errol had overlooked the fact that it inhabited the body of a sword emperor, implying that Errol's attack were inflicting little harm. With that, the demon leaped and struck Errol on the shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. Believing the boy to be defeated, the demon was astonished when the dust settled to reveal Errol seemingly having absorbed the impact, with minimal injury, a testament to his training with Ray. This slightly unsettled Gilda would then launch another assault, but Errol calmly repelled him before retaliating with his infinite breath technique, relentlessly slashing and hiking at the demon from numerous angles, completely overwhelming it in a rapid succession of blows. This barrage triggered Gilda's post-traumatic stress, as he had no doubt Errol was employing the full repertoire of a sword god's attacks. Yet he struggled to comprehend how a mere boy could possess such a high level of swordsmanship. Before Gilda could formulate a strategy, Errol delivered a powerful final slash, felling the demon, who collapsed to the ground in a cloud of dust. The crowd erupted in cheers for Errol, believing he had vanquished the demon god, but Gilda was not truly defeated, as its actual essence resided within the sword itself. All the inflict damage had been sustained by George's body. The demon swiftly began searching for a new host and immediately lunged towards Rod. Errol managed to shove Ray out of the way. Meanwhile, Rod bravely positioned himself in front of his daughter to shield her. When the dust settled, however, Rod stood there, the demon sword clutched in his hand, and slowly pressing the blade against her throat. Errol berated himself for failing to comprehend that he should have targeted the sword, not George's physical form, to truly defeat the demon. But now it was too late. The possessed Rod warned Errol that Lolly would be if he moved an inch. Yet Errol moved freely, asserting that the demon couldn't truly harm Lolly. Ray, bewildered, questioned why he was antagonizing a literal demon. However, when Gilda attempted to strike Lolly, the hand refused to obey. Errol explained that Rod was considerably more resilient than George had ever been, making his complete position a far more challenging feat. Rod then plunged the sword into the earth, releasing Lolly, while Gilda struggled to regain dominance. Rod, however, proved too formidable, successfully breaking free from the demon's hold and flinging the sword towards Errol, who promptly shattered it into dust. This act finally annihilated the demon. Several days elapsed since the terrifying ordeal, but it ultimately proved advantageous for Lolly as guild, as Errol's victory in the Sword God Cup held widely publicized Dragonfang as renewed ambition to reclaim its former standing as the preeminent guild in the city. Upon hearing this, numerous aspiring swordsmen began enrolling in the guild, anticipating training directly from the Sword God Cup victor, Errol himself. Regrettably for them, however, they found themselves with a mentor far more seasoned and considerably stricter than Errol, in the person of Rod, who had undergone a significant transformation following the recent incident. Having regained his self-assurance, Rod began to rigorously train the new guild recruiter, displaying the same intense passion he once possessed as he single-handedly sparred against all of them. He thoroughly overpowered them, pushing their training to the point of exhaustion until they could no longer stand. Consequently, one of the fresh recruiter ended up concealing himself behind a pillar. Lolly, however, spotted him and confronted him, asserting that his acceptance into their guild was solely based on his promise to commit fully and train with unwavering dedication. The recruit cast his gaze downward, murmuring his disbelief that Rod himself would personally oversee their training with such a brutal regimen. He then posed a question to Lolly, inquiring if Errol would also be joining their training session soon. Lolly let out an exasperated sigh, revealing that Errol had ultimately withdrawn from the guild following his triumph in the Sword God Cup. She tearfully lamented how even Ray had pursued him, hoping to intervene, but now both were absent for the foreseeable future, leaving her with no idea when, or if, they would ever return. Meanwhile, Errol was already journeying through the forest, reading in the chart of the same adventurer who had initially transported him to this city. The griever expressed his astonishment at Errol's swift departure from the city of Brescia, especially after his victory in the Sword God Cup had effectively made him a local celebrity. Errol calmly responded that since he had won the Sword God Cup, widely chose this as the ultimate competition for the most formidable swordsman. It implied he had already bested the finest talents Brescia had to offer, thus negating a further reason for his presence there. The driver, however, remained perplexed, as ample justification still existed for remaining in the city renowned for its swordsmen, particularly when one held the estimate title of its most powerful combatant. Europe, conversely, expressed his unwillingness to remain idle in an environment that no longer presented a challenge. The driver subsequently inquired about the precise reason for his return to his village, speculating if he was experiencing homesickness. Earl, however, stated his sole desire was to put his abilities to the test against the most formidable opponent. Although the extent of his progress through training, the driver appeared bewildered, but Errol asserted his intention to discover if he possessed the capability to vanquish his own monster in a sparring contest. A short time later, he at last arrived at his village and attempted to discreetly enter his residence and catch his mother, who was gathering flowers of gourd. However, his highly experienced mother instantly detected his presence and called out his name, much to Errol's astonishment. Yet, he smiled, recognizing that he had been discovered being the world's strongest fighter, not just an ordinary woman. His mother then turned, scrutinizing him from head to toe, remarking that he appeared to have accumulated a fair amount of experience. Errol responded by informing him of his victory in the Sword God Chop, a revelation that visibly delighted his mother, as she proudly declared that their family now boasted two champions of that prestigious competition. Errol offered a smile in response, but in an instant, his mother vanished, only to materialize directly in front of him, holding a flower to his pouch and inquiring about its fragrance. Errol was utterly taken aback by this display. Instantly comprehending that had the flower been a sword, he would have been utterly defeated, signifying his continued need for extensive training if he harbored aspirations of ever attaining his mother's mastery in swordsmanship. Jason smiled at her, acknowledging that she had seen straight through his intentions, and already understood the true purpose of his visit. His mother returned his smile, asserting that she wouldn't by his mother if she could to discern his desires. Simply by observing his gaze, she did, however, inform him that nagging in a sparring match at their current location would undoubtedly result in the complete destruction of their home, and suggested they hold their sparring session at the training ground situated beyond the mountain. Both then prepared themselves and convened at the designated sparring set. With swords now in hand, she smiled at him, pondering the current extent of her son's strength. Errol, however, cautioned her against underestimating him, as he had made significant advancement since their previous encounter on the training field. His mother merely offered a smile, and in a flash, she materialized directly before him, her sword already unsheathed. Errol succeeded in parrying the strike, causing sparks to fly as he struggled to repel her. She smiled at him, asserting that she wished to dispel a notion that she was taking their match seriously. Errol, however, endeavored to disregard her remarks, aware that even a fleeting moment of inattention could prove catastrophic. He recognized that his ability to block this particular attack stemmed from having witnessed her execute the identical maneuver previously. In their own backyard, He-chan understood the necessity of initiating an offensive if he intended to defeat her, prompting him to deftly sidestep her sword before leaping into the air and unleashing a combined assault of defense slash and twin air slasher upon her. His mother, however, effortlessly parried the attack, and then excitedly inquired if we had indeed employed both skills in conjunction. Errol confirmed this, and in turn asked what specific technique she had utilized to block his offensive. This question puzzled her, and she responded that she had merely swung her sword, nothing more. Errol was astounded, as he came to the realization that his assaults were so effortlessly managed that she didn't even require any special abilities to counter them. They proceeded to clash against one another, generating immense shockwaves that terrified the villagers, leading them to speculate if two monstrous entities were engaged in combat. Within the forest, Errol persisted with his offensive, employing an aerial lab technique to traverse the air and cross the distance to her. But she successfully repelled his advance. As both combatants returned to the ground, his mother smiled at him, declaring that it might be time for her to unleash her full capabilities. As she then released the divine power inherent in her sword, Errol mirrored her action, and he engaged in another first class. Concurrently, Ray arrived at the village, finding it largely uninhabited, and thus resolved to project to Errol's residence. To inquire if they had already come back. The door was opened by Errol's younger sister, who clearly harbored an aversion to women she considered when just appearing at her doorstep asking about her sibling. She attempted to dismiss Ray and close the door, but at that precise moment, Aaron and his mother arrived, visibly bruised and battered from their sparring match. They expressed surprise at encountering Ray in the village, and explained that he had been engaged in a sparring contest with his mother in the forest. His mother, appearing immensely proud, asserted that Errol had grown considerably more powerful, and had even bested her that day. Errol smiled and responded that their match had been incredibly close, and they had managed to overcome her solely through sheer strength, nothing more. Ray remained utterly astonished, given that his mother was, in fact, a legendary sword god. Hero, however, countered that had she been in her prime, she would have effortlessly dispatched him, yet, even in her current, somewhat diminished state, having just rigorous training years prior, she still represented the most formidable adversary he had ever encountered. They soon entered the house and settled down to converse over some check, where his mother displayed keen interest in learning how Errol had come to know this attractive young woman. Errol replied that he had previously cohabited in the city, a revelation that caused his mother's eyes to sparkle with excitement. As she pondered if Ray might be the on. However, Ray promptly clarified that their relationship was strictly professional, as members of the same guild, and nothing more. With that, she recalled her original reason for being there and questioned Errol about his sudden departure from the guild. Errol responded by stating he had submitted a letter of resignation. In addition, Ray, however, contended that he ought to have at least spoken to them and bid farewell before his exit. Aaron, perhaps exhibiting traits of Asperger's or a similar condition, merely responded, given the lack of competition in the city, his departure was inevitable. Errol's mother then inquired if Ray's long journey was solely due to her concern for Errol. Ray denied this, asserting her true purpose was to become Errol's mother's pupil, eager to master all her skills. Errol's mother, in turn, questioned if Ray's ambition was to learn how to be a suitable way for Errol. However, before Ray could retort, a recognizable voice emanated from Errol's front yard. It was Evans, Ray's father, calling out to Errol's mother. He urgently stated that he had to go to the forest at once, as incredibly powerful monsters had recently appeared there. These creatures had already devastated half of it. Errol's mother quickly responded, asserting that she and Errol had already visited the area. They had confronted the monster, ensuring it would no longer pose a threat. Relevant, events confirmed the world informed the village that an immediate evacuation was unnecessary. It was then he spotted his daughter, Ray, remarking on her increasing resemblance to her mother. Daily, he inquired about her presence, but before Ray could answer, Errol's mother interjected, stating Ray wished to learn how to be a good spouse. Ray countered, insisting her sole ambition was to be a skilled swordswoman. Errol's mother reassured her, promising to teach her both swordsmanship and domestic responsibilities. With that settled, Errol ascended to his father's study, finding him engrossed in work at his desk, surrounded by numerous magical symbols. His father greeted Errol, announcing He was close to a significant discovery that could become his ultimate technical. Errol, however, showed no interest in this. He bluntly informed his father that he had finally bested his mother and though desired to learn magic from him, his father congratulated him on vanquishing the sword but immediately declared that learning magic was beyond Errol's capabilities. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, his mother offered Ray a knife, intending to test her vegetable chopping. However, Ray accustomed only to swords, wielded it similarly, shattering the entire table. They startled both Errol's mother and his younger sister. A short time later, Errol and his father mended the table, and Errol's father demonstrated his magic by fixing a broken mug. As he returned the tools to the set, his father reiterated that Errol should cease attempting magic, as it was impossible for him. He clarified that with swords, Errol could practice daily, gradually improving. The broken sword's entire set attested to his diligence. However, attempting to learn magic without a mana pool was akin to mastering a sword without arms, virtually impossible. Errol then fights his father, inquiring precisely how. Heck knew Errol liked mana. His father explained that Errol would have been assigned a class if he possessed mana. Errol, however, recounted an incident during training with Ray and Bestia, where he depleted the guild's entire supply of holy water. This angered the Lord, who pointed out their guild was already in debris, and Errol's holy water usage was exacerbating their financial woes. Consequently, she offered him several mana recovery potions, instructing him to consume it first instead. Since ingesting the potions, Errol had felt a faint rush of mana circulating within him. His father found this revelation highly intriguing. He resolved to test it, instructing Errol to release a small quantity of mana into his palm. To his astonishment, Errol succeeded, but instantly collapsed, unconscious. This unequivocally proved Errol possessed a minute amount of mana. Upon regaining consciousness, Errol asked his father how he could now learn magic. His father responded that his current mana reserve was thinner than a newborn Therefore, he needed to expand it through dirinya. Kasi nimat or asal, and acquired more smantapansier than committed to laki. After a full 6 months, he could generate enough mana to be classified among absolute beginners with a very limited mana capacity. His father, however, was ecstatic, suggesting Errol attend the Magic Academy where he himself had mastered his spell. Ye Chan unrolled a parchment covered in spells, informing Errol that he would need to learn them to cast any magic. Consequently, Errol's mind began to rise with fresh prospects, envisioning learning magic at the very institution that had shaped his father into one of the nation's foremost wizards. That evening, as they gathered for dinner, Errol's mother shared that Ray was improving significantly in both household chores and swordsmanship, which delighted her. Simultaneously, Errol's father announced that Errol was now on the path to becoming a wizard. There will be unlocking bonus opportunities. 3 years elapsed since then. Ray had diligently trained daily with Errol's mother, honing her skills as both a swordswoman and a homemaker. This morning, Errol's mother assigned her the task of preparing morning tea. Initially stressed, Ray soon composed herself and eventually served the tea. With trembling hands, she anxiously awaited Errol's mother's reaction. After a sip and a moment of tasting, Errol's mother exclaimed that Ray had done an excellent job, as the tea was perfect. This made Ray feel a joy greater than she anticipated, but her celebration was abruptly interrupted by a cry from upstairs. It was Errol's younger sister, Mira, who wailed that upon trying to wake Aaron, he was gone, leaving only a note. Ray and Errol's mother examined the note, which contained a single line from him. He was heading to Arsba, the city of magic, for training. His mother felt a pang of sadness, wishing he had at least said farewell. while Mira continued to weep. This prompted Ray to reflect on how her own past actions, when she departed for the sword city of Brescia, must have affected her family. Arol's mother promptly told Ray she did not want her to live in a similar manner. Ray assured her she would never, as she still had much to learn. Arol's mother mused on how her eldest daughter had lived, and now Errol had also departed, leaving her to wonder when she would see him again. Meanwhile, Errol was already at the village's edge. He was traveling with the same night shift driver, who appeared surprised to encounter Errol once more. Errol inquired about the travel team, and the man responded, "It will take approximately 2 days to arrive." Their conversation continued, with the driver remarking on Errol's peculiar nature. He noted Errol had gone to Brescia, displayed remarkable strength and skill. Then abandoned all fame and wealth to return to a village so obscure that few knew of its existence. After that, he vanished for 3 years, only to now be heading to Osba, the city of magic. Errol stated his intention to test his abilities in the entrance examination. He wanted to gauge his performance against other candidates. Suddenly, a young red-haired boy asked Errol if he was also attending the Magic Academy as entrance exam, finding it out given Errol as age compared to typical candidate. World not for second. Admonishing him not to mock others, as it was clear Errol had been repeatedly failing the exam for years. Before Errol could clarify, Errol noted, "This is his first visit to the city." The blue-haired youth expresses admiration for individuals who, despite their perceived weaknesses, strive for self-improvement. The red-haired boy and the blue-haired girl immediately begin to quarrel, prompting the green-haired girl to attempt to calm the escalating tension between them. Her efforts are unsuccessful. The red-haired boy then redirects his attention to Errol, inquiring about his magical specialization and asserting his own proficiency in red magic. Errol's man drifts back to his father as teaching, remembering the various magical affinities: black associated with dark magic, and white with light magic, yellow signifying earth magic, green representing wind magic, blue for water magic, and red for fire magic. However, Errol possessed no inherent magical aptitudes. Consequently, his father resolved to instruct him in every conceivable form of magic. Errol as talked to the reason can get addressed later, that he is unsure of his magical capabilities, as he lacks a specific class. The boy reacts with astonishment, but the blue-haired girl dismisses Errol as a failure, asserting that Errol is clearly mocking them, given that an individual without a class could never aspire to take the Magic Academy entrance exams. The red-haired boy, incensed, spins around, demanding Errol chase his mockery. Errol, however, assures him he was not joking and substantiates his claim by presenting his class card, revealing to everyone that he is, in fact, genuinely classless. The young onlookers are astounded by this revelation and declare that he stands no chance of passing the entrance examinations. Yet, before Errol could utter another word, a deafening roar emanated from the forest, causing the surrounding trees to tremble. Errol instantly identified the sound, declaring it to be a troll king awakened from its slumber. The boy instantly descended into a state of panic, insisting that he must make an immediate escape. Given the troll king's immense power, the blue-haired girl then frantically implores the driver to accelerate. The driver, turning with a look of terror, informs them that due to the roar, his horses have collapsed from fright. The girl comprehends that escape is impossible and they are forced to confront the situation. So she begins to devise a strategy. She reassures the red-haired boy and the green-haired girl that, ultimately, a troll is merely a troll, and by collaborating, they can easily subdue the lumbering creature. Their carefully laid plans are shattered. However, when the troll king finally emerges from the dense forest, wielding an enormous club, The red-haired boy attempts to swattle the frightened girls, reminding them of the troll as colossal seas but emphasizing the need to remain composed and endeavor to defeat it. Before the troll even reach, we are startled by a sudden event. As the initial troll is violently hurled through the air by an enormous club, revealing an even larger troll emerging from the water. The girls collapse to their knees, shaking uncontrollably and clinging to one another, understanding that their magical abilities would be utterly ineffective against such a creature. Nevertheless, the red-haired boy retains his self-possession, unwilling to show fear in front of the other. He leaps from the chariot, attempts to steady his nerves, then draws his magic wand and, expending all his available mana, launches a fireball directly at the troll's face. For a brief instant, they believed they had a fighting chance, but as the smoke dissipated, the troll emerged entirely unscathed and visibly more enraged than before. The boy had depleted all his mana on that single attack, leaving him with no reserves to attempt an escape. The troll begins to charge towards the boy when, without warning, a massive explosion engulfs the entire vicinity, reducing the troll to mere ashes. Everyone is astonished, but Errol steps out from behind them, remarking that perhaps he should have exercised a bit more restraint. The boy is utterly dumbfounded by this, and even the girls begin to converse among themselves about the revelation that explosion magic is an exceptionally advanced magical discipline, typically wielded only by powerful mages. Errol pays them no heed and promptly moves towards the horses, employing his healing spell to revive them. As he turns back, he discovers the red-haired boy kneeling, pleading for his forgiveness, and imploring Errol to become his master, expressing his desire to become a formidable wizard himself. Errol attempts to explain that we are mistaken, asserting that he is no master, but merely an applicant for the exam. He once again displays his class card, but the green-haired girl remarks that he must be an exceptionally powerful mage, and is likely using a counterfeit child to conceal his true identity. Unable to rectify the misunderstanding, he resolves to proceed on his journey towards the city of Arslan. A few days later, he arrived at their destination in the early morning. The city is nestled beside the lake, featuring drawbridges on every side for entry and exit. The girls observe in astonishment, as the previously arrogant and self-assured red-haired boy now behaves like a docile pet, circling around and plying him with numerous questions. Once inside, the boy informs Errol that Errol must be taking the red magic examination, implying they will be grouped together, while the green-haired and blue-haired girls will be tested on earth and water magic, respectively. Errol discovers her that the curriculum and assessments are categorized according to magical affinities. He silently hopes he won't be immediately dismissed, as he was embarrassed due to his classless status. To his astonishment, however, upon reaching the reception desk, the receptionist greets him with a smile and affixes a stamp to his card, then provides him with his roll number. Errol inquires if his classless status poses an issue, and the receptionist replies, by stating that every individual possesses an equal entitlement to participate in the examination, and no one will face discrimination. Errol comprehends that this location is markedly distinct from Brescia. He then proceeds towards the testing grounds, where he observes a group of young individuals clothed up on of warm, launches a modest fireball at a metallic nail, successfully completing the test. However, before Errol could fully grasp the nature of his own upcoming task, a flamboyant young boy with red hair striders into the testing arena and asks the instructor if he has permission to obliterate one of the metallic figures. Initially bewildered, the instructor then examines the boy as care, discovering that he is an advanced magic user, a remarkably uncommon class. All the boys are astounded and observe as the boy approaches, then just as pen to conjure a towering pillar of flame that entirely consumes the metallic nail. The boy appears pleased with his accomplishment, but the red-haired boy interjects, asserting that his arrow could achieve a superior result. The arrogant boy instantly takes offense and confronts him, questioning whether he believes an ordinary individual could surpass an advanced magic user. The red-haired boy defiantly retorts that his arrow could eat him for breakfast and spit him out before lunch. The concentrated boy dismisses this as empty threats, proclaiming that no one can rival his ability to melt metal. Errol eventually interjects, I will remember that can start not in your health. The instructor has ladranges that which is renowned as one of the world's most resilient metals and is not easily damaged. The red-haired boy resumes teasing the arrogant Yodo, implicating Errol in his remarks, by asserting that Errol would perform significantly better. Errol delivers a light tap to his head before stepping into the arena. He opts to employ the identical skill used by the arrogant boy, a choice that already astonishes everyone. However, the resulting explosion was far less spectacular, manifesting as merely a small column of fire that appeared to inflict no harm. The arrogant boy begins to laugh, but his amusement abruptly ceases when the material knight completely liquefies into a pool of molten metal. The boy is stunned, asserting that eruption magic is incapable of melting material. Errol, however, responds that he utilized a modified variant of that particular magic. He channeled all the fire into a concentrated, narrow beam, generating an unparalleled intensity of heat, far exceeding any other explosive magic. Following this, he simply exited that particular arena. Next, he proceeded to the blue magic arena. Here, the blue card gear successfully struck her target and advanced. She was visibly startled by Errol's presence, but he wasted no time. He immediately launched another ace-edged assault, shattering the previous obstacle. Before heading towards the green magic arena, leaving both the instructor and the students completely astonished. Just outside the entrance to that arena, however, he noticed the green attire gear, who admitted she hadn't even signed opinion, explaining her hesitation was due to extreme apprehension. He offered her words of encouragement, successfully bolstering her self-assurance, guided her through the registration process, and then they proceeded towards the competition area. This particular examination was quite straightforward, requiring only the casting of a simple wind spell to rotate the windmill position before them. However, in his characteristic exaggerated manner, Errol conjured a full-blown tornado, utterly demolishing the windmill into countless fragments, much to the instructor's astonishment. The grandeur was up next, and was once again becoming overwhelmed with anxiety. However, Errol provided her with and for speaking. Han perhatian pada anai. This was so successful kotak. With that hurdle overcome, he effortlessly excelled in both the light magic school and the yellow magic school, subsequently making his way towards the dark magic school. From its exterior, this institution appeared deserted, with not a living soul in sight. When he abruptly detected an unusual sound emanating from under the book, he was on the verge of investigating it when, without warning, he overheard a lamentarfully exclaiming that her pet was missing and inquired if Errol had spotted it anywhere. Errol, at a loss for words, suggested that there was indeed something inside the box. The woman promptly began rummaging through the box, eventually extracting a peculiar, toad-like monstrosity. No appearing content, she fetched Errol, asserting that she had personally engineered this chimera, and asked if he found it adorable. Errol could only manage a fine smell when, without warning, a skeleton suddenly startled him from directly behind. His innate reflexes took over, and with a single sweep of his wand, he decapitated the skeleton. The skeleton immediately scrambled to retrieve its shield, while Errol questioned issue was, in face, an undead creature. The skeleton asserted that she was a charming avatar at this location and introduced herself as Lada. Carol then inquired about the whereabouts of the examination hall. Lada informed him that the dark magic school was accessible to Anyone, as they rarely attracted many students. Consequently, he successfully gained entry into all 6 magical institutions. Upon finalizing his registration, he exited the premises, where he was immediately encircled by the red cloud boy and the blue-green girl, who promptly began to dispute amongst themselves, debating how Errol would undoubtedly join their respective schools, given that he had participated in their examinations. However, Errol stunned them by disclosing that he had successfully passed all 6 assessments, and intended to master every single magical affinity from that point forward. However, this is where the video concludes. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.